Thanks very much, Phil. We'll see you in a short while. We first spoke to Mark Barnes in November 2015 when he became the new CEO of the South African Post Office. From a corporate background, Mark Barnes took over the reins, committing to turn around an entity that was bleeding money due to strike action and corruption. Now, if things go well, the Post Office is likely to take on one of its biggest projects yet, that being the distribution of social grants to South Africa's 17 million recipients. Mark Barnes is here to share with us what took place in the past 2 days during the parliamentary process that looked into the matter. Mark, thank you so much for coming in. Good to see you again.
Thanks for your interest.
Yeah, I tell you what, I mean, it's been quite a fiery week, hasn't it, between you and the department?
Yeah, it's not a quiet world. Yeah, I think we were quite far apart in our assessment of the task at hand, and that was the real issue. And so this process, when it got to sort of a deadlock and impasse between us, we needed to illuminate all of the information between us, so that at least we were working off the same set of data, so to speak. And so we were asked a lot of questions, gave a lot of answers. I think there was scope for misinterpreting those capabilities, and so we had to be sort of brought together to discover the real facts.
Yeah. When you say brought together, I mean, shouldn't these negotiations have been taking place for a long time? We're led to believe that there have been absolutely no meetings up until this week.
There was, you may recall, there was a sort of change in management in SASA, around June, July this year, and so we were engaged quite intensely with them. I think we had 14 sessions with them. We had work groups. We did presentations to one another, and so on. With the change of management, I think there was there was a distance that grew between us, in the sense that at one point they were looking at giving us the contract, and then they decided they wanted to go on some sort of RFP route, a tender kind of route, where we'd already got permission from National Treasury to deviate from that normal set of circumstances that state-owned enterprises are required to follow. And and so this process of toing and froing has taken a lot longer than we'd like it to, and there's a lot of technical understanding that's required between the two entities in relation to the technology of banking and the the operability of cards, and there's a very big difference between what the post office does, if you will, for its normal living, which is transport parcels and boxes and envelopes and things around, and deliver cash, which happens in Postbank.
Yeah.
So Postbank is this, if you will, insulated, very highly regulated entity where money lives most of its life inside a computer, not on the back of a truck. And so we needed to cross all of those understandings of one another. But I think now, because we hadn't found peace about the allocation of the work that we were given, which was really just the systems development, which we would argue is inextricably linked to the banking delivery service, which is our core strength, we didn't find a middle ground, and we were then required to, as two organs of state. I think just to finish, I think the pressing imperative here is that if a government service can be done within organs of state, then that essentially retains the economics inside the fiscus, rather than paying it out to the private sector when you can do it yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the idea, because from the outside, it almost looks like the minister is not wanting to give it to the post office, because already it was said that out of the 4 services that need to be offered in order for SASA to go ahead and to be awarded entirely to the post office, you need to meet 4 criteria. They, however, are only saying that you are only right to provide an integrated payment system which can handle beneficiaries' biometric data, but you are not successful in the rest: the banking services, card production, cash payments, and that's a big bulk of it. Now, you're refusing to accept only one of them. You want everything. So it doesn't look like the minister has too much faith in the post office to do this. Yeah,
well, as I say, there might have been a sort of disconnect, both in terms of future strategy and in terms of the facts of the matter presented to us. And what's happened now, I think quite rightly, is we've both subjected ourselves to, if you will, a higher authority. The kids couldn't agree. The parents have been called in.
And boy, have the parents been called in.
And the parents have now been called in.
You've got Treasury and the Reserve Bank overseeing the negotiations.
Yeah, which I think is right, because we're not trying to stand up and make a fool of ourselves by standing up and saying we can do something as critical to the national interest as this, unless we've thought our way through it, which we have. And it's time critical, in the sense that we've got 5 months left, whereas people are starting to do counted in working days, 98 working days left. So we need to become one, and we need to work with common purpose.
Yeah. Mark, can the post office really do this? I mean, and I'll just bring up a simple example. car licenses.
Yeah.
I've gone to my local post office to renew my car license.
Yeah.
I've been turned away at least 5 times. Why? There's no ink. There's no paper.
Yeah.
The staff is not there. Now imagine somebody relying on that money that they need, and they turned away. Sorry, we can't. We haven't got this. We haven't got that. We haven't got this.
Yeah.
And this is a reality. This is a personal experience that I go through for a car license. How are you going to handle 17 million recipients?
Okay, well, first of all, you haven't listed any banking services there.
Okay.
Because if you went to us for banking service, you'd have had quite a different experience. Postbank has been around for 140 years, whatever it is. We're a highly capitalized bank. We've got 6 million people who've got account holders. We do millions of transactions a day. We're a member of the national payment system. We're members of MasterCard and Visa. And you wouldn't qualify for all of those participating memberships and clearing systems unless you were a properly thought through bank. Now, we operate as Postbank under the Postbank Act. It's a slightly different act that then governs, the Banks Act. But so we have a fully operable bank, which is way overcapitalized. And we have a bigger footprint than, probably 5 times what any other bank has. So in as much as you would view one of our tellers as an auto bank, you can go there and draw your cash. Now, there are partners in things like motor vehicle licenses, first point. Like, how many machines does the department want to have at post offices? And is the queue long? Do they want to have 2 machines? Those kinds of debates are happening. And then you're also talking about a world which was back in 2014, 2015, when the post office ran out of money completely. Okay, there was no ink. In fact,
Absolutely.
when I arrived at the post office, there wasn't toilet paper at the head office.
Yeah, I
okay?
believe so. People were bringing toilet paper to work.
We were battling, man. People were bringing paper from home, and that's to print things on. Okay, so that world is behind us. We raised 2.7 of additional loans. And that capital has just been injected into us. So, well, it's not physically arrived yet. But in the mini budget, they committed to essentially eliminate all of our debt with a 3.7 billion equity injection. So we're talking about a completely different post office than the one that you might have become used to over the last 3 years. And more importantly, we're talking about a bank inside a government infrastructure. My argument is this. This is a government infrastructure that is currently only occupied by the post office. If you were the government, surely you would want to utilize this government-owned infrastructure to deliver whatever to your citizens.
Yeah.
We want to see ourselves moving into social grants, beyond that, into healthcare, into education, into whatever it is that you need physical delivery for. Even e-commerce. We see ourselves eventually as the e-commerce hub of Africa.
There was a recommendation by the minister to give it a test, to say take 100,000 people, test it at the post office, see if you can win. You weren't too happy with that.
No, I'm quite happy with that.
So you would want to do that, give it a try.
Of course, this is going to be a collegiate effort. Okay, bear in mind we used to pay all the social grants. Okay, go back to 2009, we were paying 900,000 people social grants. In those days, there were only 900,000. There's a story in that somewhere. Okay.
Yeah.
We used to pay all the social grants in the post office, okay? And that was taken away when CPS got involved in the thing, whatever the case might be. So we can do it. There's no question that we can do it, okay?
Yeah.
But would we subject ourselves to incremental rollout and incremental? Absolutely. It was part of our proposal. Our proposal was, let's do a province, and let's get the Auditor General, if you like, to say they can do it. Then let's do the next province. In any normal world, when one service provider is handing over to another service provider, you have this overlap period. You have this parallel period, and this overlap period, you test it, you make sure it works, and then you hand it over. Okay, we're not saying there's a switch that has to get switched on. That's
You're
too
happy
risky.
to phase it in.
Of course.
Just finally, we've run out of time, but I have to ask you, there are 98 days until the 1st of April 2018. Can you possibly meet that deadline?
It's getting difficult. And I think what's going to happen is, if and when we become one, which will be next week, okay, then we start counting. And by the way, those 98 days are just work days, so we can expend them by a few more when we include weekends and so on. But I think if we've got an absolutely clear solution that's been defined and is uncontested, we can go to the Constitutional Court and say the primary objective has been achieved, which is to change the service provider, not only from CPS to someone else, but from a private sector to a public sector entity. With that absolute confirmed information, and with a very well audited progress to the finish line, I think we can agree with the Constitutional Court that the date should be not the 1st of April, but the 1st of June. I'm making this up, okay? But we would have a definite solution which is endurable. And at the end of the game, instead of creating a dependency, which is what we've got at the moment, we'd create an asset inside the state.
All right, we leave it there. Mark, thank you very much for talking to us here on the program. Mark Barnes is the CEO of the South African Post Office, wanting to take on the social grants here in South Africa and those payments, and saying that they are confident they can do absolutely all of it and won't settle for anything less. Let's take a break. We'll see you after this.